Sup, Kimosabi? I'm Leon, the Paperback Maniac, coming at you with the sixth and possibly final vintage horror book review for Satanic Summer. Today, we are taking a look at Satan's Servant by B.W. Battin. This book was published by Paperjacks in 1984. I will begin by reading the synopsis from the back cover. A 9-year-old boy propositions his favorite teacher, using obscenities that would make a sailor blush. A farmer discovers dozens of hacked-up chickens on his property. A baby is kidnapped and later found with its throat slashed, the clawed body of the kidnapper nearby. What is happening? The sleepy town of Rancho Lucero, New Mexico, is possessed. A night of unspeakable terror awaits the handful of survivors who put their faith in the one man who can destroy the soul-devouring demons. That man is Satan's servant, and he must destroy them or die. So, that synopsis is pretty straightforward and doesn't lie too much, which we all know is a rarity in these cases. So what we have here is really nothing new. This is basically a possession story. The only difference is rather than a single child being possessed by an evil spirit, it's an entire town. The setting here is Rancho Lucero, New Mexico, a sleepy little adobe town that has been transitioning into suburbia due to spillover from the expanding nearby city of Albuquerque. But still, the police force is basically a two-man operation comprised of Police Chief Mike Ryan and his trusty partner Arminio. Now, I instantly liked our police chief, Mike Ryan. I found him pretty relatable. Like me, he's 36, never married, no kids, not really any desire for those things. He kind of rejects family and societal pressure to, toe the line and join the system. He's pretty laid back. He doesn't go with the crowd and things like that. And, he seemed like a good guy. Our Mike. Very dedicated to his work as well, which is another reason he's, resisting the urge to marry his girlfriend, who is not a bad girl. But, he's kind of like a loner, right? At the beginning of the novel, Mike gets a call to investigate a bunch of dead chickens that had been discovered on the riverbank. And so when he goes to meet a land surveyor who had discovered this grisly site, he finds about 30 or 40 chickens in various stages of decomposition. They're very badly decomposing, and each and every one of these chickens, oddly, has had its throat cut. Now, the land surveyor who discovered these chickens and called Police Chief Mike suggests that it might be those devil worshippers in the nearby Church of the Four Elements, which is a satanic church just out of town. And now, Police Chief Mike has never really had a problem with these people. As I said, he's pretty live and let live. But to appease this old codger, he says, okay, you know what, I'll go talk with them. I'll see if they know anything about this. Now, before Mike leaves, he sees kind of a hidden trail, a path leading through some dense foliage. And so he follows this trail and goes into this very kind of remote clearing where he finds what looks to be a bunch of stones that had been kind of put in a circular pattern, but then scattered. He also sees some markings in the grass, in the trampled grass, that could be blood, and it appears that someone had been coming here for some time. And then near these scattered stones, he sees the stub of a black candle. So it is looking a little worshipy, right? A little culty. So as Mike promised, he goes and talks with the reverend of the Church of the Four Elements, the Satanic Church nearby, Reverend Father Mike. And now Father Mike goes on to kind of explain a little bit about the church, to disabuse Mike of any erroneous notions he may have. And he actually makes the church sound very, very reasonable. He says that the church's position is that man is simply a very highly evolved animal, right? Not born of a like heavenly creation. And therefore, they believe that man should lead a lusty and pleasure-filled life, right? So they're all about basically, rejecting society's taboos and just partaking of the pleasures of life and doing things, frankly, that other religions, namely Christianity, would frown upon and consider sinful. And he says, we're a very honest religion. No one claims to be pure. No one claims to be perfect. We just live our lives. And then Mike Ryan, the police chief, asks, okay, that's all great, but do any of your rituals involve animal sacrifice? And Reverend Mike says, of course not. We feel kinship with the animals since they consider man basically to just be a highly evolved animal. And he says, well, why do you ask that? And Mike Ryan, the police chief, says, well, he explains the discovery of these hacked up chickens, and then this causes the Reverend Mike, or I keep mixing them up. Reverend, what's his name? Father Mike, yeah. He gets really a look of apprehension crosses his face, and he says, "Ooh, that sounds like it could have been like possible, like a conjuring." And then he says it sounds like maybe like an amateur occultist had tried to conjure up something, and this can be obviously very dangerous, if mistakes are made. And then he tells police chief Mike to contact him, if anything comes up about this, because he's concerned. So soon thereafter, a 6-month-old baby girl goes missing from its crib, and police chief Mike and his partner Erminio are on the case. They don't have any leads, and then not long after, they get a call that the body was found, and then they have to go back to the river, the banks of the river, not far from where the chickens were found. And there has been discovered first the body of a young man who was sprawled face down in the sand, and who appeared to be attacked by a large animal, because he has these deep, chunky, parallel claw marks, like just gouged into his back. And not far from this man is the body of a dead baby, which is on its back with its throat slit, and nearby there is a silver dagger, presumably the murder weapon of the baby. And the conclusion of the police, evidently now, is that the kidnapper abducted this baby, took it to the riverbank, sacrificed it, performed some sort of sacrifice, slit his throat with the dagger, but then was attacked by a large animal and killed. Mike investigates this young man's past to try to learn a little more about him, finds that oddly this man was never a part of the Church of the Four Elements, the satanic church that he had, questioned. Apparently he had tried it out once or twice, but found that it wasn't legit enough for him. So he had no association with this church. And then Mike, meanwhile, is trying to gather some evidence. So he takes some evidence from the crime scene. He takes a ripped up wooden board that has some of these ruts in it, these gouges, presumably from the beast that had killed the young man. And he takes it to a university zoologist to study. And the zoologist examines it and says that this could not have come from any animal that they know. That, the gouges in the wood are so deep and so close together that it doesn't kind of align with any animal they know. And it couldn't have been a human either, because even if a man was wearing some sort of claw glove or something, he wouldn't be strong enough to kind of make that sort of impact in the wood. So that's very curious. And then from there, just a bunch of weird stuff starts happening around town. We meet, for instance, an 8th grade kid, class clown, Ricky Clausen, who despises his 8th grade teacher, Ms. Harmon, for constantly rebuking him and giving him detention. And one day in class, Ricky catches a glimpse down the blouse of his seatmate, little young Susie Penwinkle. And he gets super aroused, and he says some lewd things to little Susie and tries to grab at her. When his teacher, Ms. Harmon, asks what's going on, he responds by saying, "None of your fucking business, bitch," and then, "Screw you." And then his countenance sort of changes into just like a really nasty like look, and all of his kind of youthful boyishness goes away, and he starts drooling from the corners of his mouth. Says some raunchy, way over the top things to his teacher, and then the room like fills with this awful stench, this terrible, noisome odor, and that makes everyone have to clear out of the entire school, and the school has to actually be closed and fumigated. And then from there, other people start losing control. Random citizens are just unleashing tirades on each other, sometimes just going totally berserk and drooling and attacking each other. People start levitating even. Men, women, and young children just start regressing into these snarling, drooling, animalistic beasts and attacking each other, trying to rape one another, and so on. We got objects flying around the rooms, and always, all of this craziness always accompanied by that nauseating odor that just permeates everything. Even Mike's sweet girlfriend Jill suddenly turns into just a wanton slut and starts taking home beefy jerks, or beef jerkies, as I like to call them, and just being completely unfaithful to Mike, and then threatening Mike, telling him she's going to rip his cock off, and just a lot of uncharacteristic, unnerving things, right? Now, Father Roger, the reverend of the local church, agrees to go through some of the evidence Mike had acquired at the murder scene of the baby, and he is horrified when he discovers a copy of a rare an ancient book of magic and incantations called the Theurgicon, a book of magic written by a Greek, an ancient magician that kind of is a book on conjuring evil spirits and spells and things like that. And Father Roger is really concerned because this book is known to be very flawed, because it goes against the kind of like the rules of nature, right? It goes against the rules of nature and all, everything. So very, very dangerous if done and if handled incorrectly, right? And he comes to the conclusion that this amateur occultist had been using this book to try to conjure evil spirits. He had first tried doing it with the chicken sacrifices and slitting the chickens' throats. That didn't work. So then he tried it with the baby, and then it did work with the baby. However, whatever he conjured then killed him. Right, and now these evil and then it's not just one evil spirit, actually, according to his hypothesis, not one evil spirit that was conjured, but many evil spirits, and that they have now kind of invaded the town, and that's what's causing all of these people to sort of go nuts, and they're being possessed basically by these evil spirits, which are not going to be easy to get rid of. You can't just easily collect these things up. You can't call Ghostbusters, right, and just and collect and send them back to where they came from that easily, right? So it kind of, things keep happening in the town. It's up to Police Chief Mike, his partner Erminio, and they team up with Reverend Father Roger of the Satanic Church and one of his disciples, a girl named Karen, so that Police Chief Mike can have a love interest. It works out that way, and they hole up in the local jail and try their best to kind of protect themselves so that they don't get possessed, and try to figure out a way to send these evil forces back to hell or wherever they came from. Right, so. as I said, the premise of this book is nothing new. We've seen small town possessed stories dozens upon dozens of times. Of course, with varying mileage depending on the aptitude of the writer. Luckily, in this case, I'm happy to say that the hackneyed conceit is handled well with, some well-drawn, likable characters, a fresh twist, and some nice writing as well. So, I think, one thing that's interesting about this book is that God and the forces of good are not mentioned even once, because these evil spirits actually have escaped to Earth from this amateur occultist's incantation. They escaped in defiance of Satan, so they fear the pentagram and Satan, not the cross. And ironically, in this case, it's up to a servant of Satan to be the one to send them back, not a servant of God, not a priest, as you normally see. So that's kind of like the new thing here, right? And I will say, so Satan's servant, I was a little disappointed that the titular servant of Satan, it was this satanic priest in human form, this Father Roger of the Church of the Four Elements. When I first saw the title, I was thinking, oh, it's like some demon from hell in demon form gonna like be sent to Earth. Like I thought that would have been cool, but yes, it's. I do like the guy though, Father Roger, the satanic priest. Really dug this dude, even if he's not really the focus of the novel. I feel like the title is a bit of a misnomer because it makes it seem as if it's his story. I wouldn't say it's his story. He's one of multiple characters, but I definitely liked Satan's servant, Father Roger. I mean, here's a dude who indulges in like all the vices, right? He smokes, has mad sex, including orgies. He typically stays up till like 4 or 5 in the morning, and wakes up around like 1 or 2 p.m. Just a cool dude and laid back, but he can also be a badass when called upon. So cool character. The book is a bit of a slow burn, I will say. Not a lot really happens after they discover the baby and the dead occultist. I mean, we do get some things periodically, but it's not like that nonstop sort of like crazy in your face horror that are in some of these other evil in a small town, people getting possessed in a small town type books. So that's why I can't really recommend this as much as like a book, a similar story, like say R. Patrick Gates's Fear, which is just non-stop in your face WTF insanity. This one, it's a little slower. It does get, there are some bits of extreme nastiness here and there. I mean, we do get, like orgies between like kids and teachers and in festering middle schools. We get some nastiness, but not as much as I think this type of story, begs for. So yeah, the novel doesn't go as extreme or off the wall enough, in my opinion, but what we do get is some nicely written prose. Mr. Battin is pretty good at showing, not telling most of the time, and he's got a facility with the English language. I did dig the New Mexico setting. I think it's a cool setting. It doesn't get used enough, like with its arroyos and its brush and cacti. It's just a cool, dusty, hot setting, right, for a novel. And I loved the depiction of this, I think, fictional town of Rancho Lucero. It's got like all those typical things you would expect in New Mexico. Those flat-roofed buildings that look like quote loaves of bread and windows. So that's cool. Now, being written in the standard third-person omniscient narration, like about 99% of these books, there's fairly large cast of characters, and sometimes that can grate on my nerves when there are so many characters and they all have their own through line, and you're constantly going back and forth between them. But in this case, I actually didn't mind that, and in fact enjoyed the panoply of characters Mr. Battin depicts here. And actually, I enjoyed them, and I was interested to see how they would sort of integrate together and sort of move the plot along. Yeah, so pretty good. One thing I wrote here, one strange thing that I noticed is this book has an odd, what did I write? It has an odd amount of people like using the restroom. Like it's mentioned a lot, and there's a lot of people like constantly waiting to use the restroom. I think maybe because, a lot of it is like these heroes, the police chief, his partner, the Satanist, and the woman, they're holed up in this jail. But like, it's just weird that I noticed that it seemed like always like people were either using the restroom or like waiting to use the restroom. Just like a weird detail that I've never noticed before, right? But, again, we get characters. It seems like it was just like a mandatory thing, but like making scientific conjectures about what these things could actually be. Maybe the evil forces are just intelligent psychic energy. Like I don't know why they always felt the need to do that. Like they wanted to they were like hell bent on giving it like some scientific verisimilitude or something. But yeah, it's fun. And of course, we get a wonderful, very 1980s line of dialogue, quote, "Quit being a bunch of male chauvinists," unquote. Yeah, and so I did enjoy this book. As far as the ending, I wasn't sure how I felt about it when I first read it, but then later, upon reflection, I actually kind of dig the ending. Like, in one sense, it's an incredibly dark ending, but on the other hand, it's kind of a happy ending. So you kind of get it, depending on how you look at it. And I thought, that's nice. So yeah, overall, I had a good time with this one. I think that the Battin's writing and the execution makes up for the triteness of the plot. And, besides, it does have that, somewhat of a fresh twist to it. It's got good characters, as I said, not as batshit as I would have liked. And a bit too much of a slow burn for me to really go out of my way and recommend it. This thing's not as fast as writers like I said, R. Patrick Gates, or even another writer who does stuff like this is William W. Johnstone, but miles ahead in terms of like execution. So if you want to actually just read a better novel in general in terms of writing and characterization, yeah, this is much better, if not as crazy as those other guys. But a solid read. If you come across a copy of this for a reasonable price, I think you could do a lot worse. So, so that is Satan's Servant, my friend, by B.W. Battin. Hope you enjoyed the review. If you like these videos and you consistently watch them, consider supporting the channel and subscribing, giving a thumbs up, sharing it, whatever. I feel like I never say that stuff. But, hopefully I will be back soon with another video. Until then, take it easy.